Teacher, so I will use that elementary school teacher voice until we get our text sorted out. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Joy Bivens, for that warm welcome. I am indeed Brian Jones, Director of the Library's Center for Educators and Schools. And with my colleagues here at the Schomburg Center, as Joy said, we've been working on this project, which its code name has been the Schomburg Curriculum, since 2018 when we first thought of it, but excuse me, now today it's launched officially as Teaching with the Schomburg Center's Archives. Today marks its official in-person launch, and we're so excited to have educator and activist Jesse Hagopian here to talk about his new book and to mark this moment with us. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge what a moment it is for this work. Our theme today is teaching truth. And for so many of our colleagues in so many institutions, including right here in New York City, that feels more daunting than ever. It is entirely appropriate, therefore, that we gather in moments like these at a library, particularly this library, to share ideas, to debate, to discuss, and to prepare ourselves for the work ahead. I want to thank you all in the audience for being here today. I want to thank the people joining us online at the live stream for tuning in. Of course, Joy Bivens, Kevin Matthews, and please give a round of applause to the entire Schomburg Center staff for making us feel welcome. One housekeeping note is that you may have noticed a documentary crew here today. They are filming what is going to be a keynote talk and conversation, and they are not to record any of our participants. At the same time, none of our patrons here will be recorded in their documentary. We do have also, hey, I will now speak in a softer voice. Thank you, tech crew. We do have a still photographer who is here. Issa, are you here? Yeah, there's Issa right there. So Issa was here on behalf of the New York Public Library and may be taking photographs of participants, but only for the library's own purposes, not for the documentary, just so you understand. I also want to thank my colleagues in the Center for Educators and Schools who really pitched in and helped manage everything, think through and manage the flow of today's program, especially Arturo Aguero, Brittany Quirarte, Juan Ben Cosme, and Lisa Gomez, who are here today. But today was largely organized by somebody you're going to meet in a moment, Kara Hill. Kara's the Schomburg Center's Educator Development Specialist. She began her career in education as an academic counselor and then an instructor at Columbia University's Upward Bound program. She taught English language arts and cinema studies in both public and independent middle and high schools in New York City and has done extensive work in curriculum development and in equity and inclusion in education. Kara will be in conversation in a moment with our keynote speaker, Jesse Hagopian. By applause, how many of you are already familiar with Jesse Hagopian's work? Okay, so maybe like 50-50. And so obviously we're all in for a treat. But those of you who know, you know, and now you all will know. We're so lucky to have Jesse here because in addition to being my friend and just a terrific person, Jesse was a member of the advisory board for the Schomburg, for Teaching with the Schomburg Center's Archives series. Jesse taught in public schools for over 20 years, is now an editor for Rethinking Schools magazine, serves on the Black Lives Matter at School Steering Committee, is director of the Teaching for Black Lives campaign with the Zinn Education Project. He's editor and co-editor of several books, most recently Black Lives Matter at School. His first book, for which he is the sole author, is Teach Truth, The Struggle for Antiracist Education. And thanks to the book's publisher, Haymarket Books, we have 100 free copies of the book to distribute to you today. Teach Truth will also be available for sale, if you want additional copies, at the Schomburg shop. So Jesse will give a short talk, and then he and Kara will have a conversation. We are running a little late, so we won't have time for questions from the audience, unfortunately, but I'll come back and give an overview of the Teaching with the Schomburg Center Archives series and then we'll go to workshops, which will take place here and in the American Negro Theater. So thanks again, and without further ado, please join me in welcoming Jesse Hagopian.
Thank you all so much. It is wonderful to be with you all. It's an extraordinary honor to be here at the Schomburg Center, a place dedicated to preserving the teaching of the rich, powerful history of the African diaspora. And I am thankful to Joy Bivens, to Brian Jones, to Kara Hill for helping organize this, and all of the Schomburg staff. Thank you so much. I couldn't imagine a better place to kick off my book tour than coming right here that has taught so many people about the Black freedom struggle. And today, as we gather in this sacred space, I'm reminded that the fight to teach truth is as urgent now as it was in Schomburg's time. Across the country, educators are being silenced, books are being banned, and laws are being passed to erase honest accounts of history. But like Schomburg, we refuse to accept the omission of Black stories and the lies about Black history that are being told. And I started writing this book in 2021. And not long after, just within the first couple weeks of me beginning to write this book, my dad made a stunning discovery that really altered my life and our family's life forever. He found out which plantation our family had been enslaved on in Mississippi, in Morgantown, Mississippi, and in Lawrence County, Mississippi. And so we immediately began making plans to go down. We wanted to actually feel the land and pay tribute to our ancestors. But unfortunately, the Delta variant of COVID spiked just after we bought our plane tickets, and we had to cancel. And then we bought plane tickets again, and my dad had a stroke, and we couldn't go. We made our plans again to leave, and then I got COVID that turned into long COVID. And my brother wanted to go with us, but he has a severe fear of flying, and so we just weren't sure how this was going to come together. But finally, in June of 2023, we decided we just couldn't wait any longer. And because, as the months rolled by, we saw law after law being passed to try to ban the history of our family. And we just had to get down there to see it, so we finally made it happen. And we were able to get onto the land. There's no marker that says, here were some of the worst crimes in human history, right? You would have no idea driving by this plantation that generations of Black people struggled to survive, that the wealth of this nation was created off of the torture and enslavement of our family and millions of others. But thankfully, we were able to contact somebody and gain access to the land, and the man who owned the land took us back to a clearing where he told us this is where our ancestors buried each other, and there was one headstone left. And at that spot, we held a ceremony for our ancestors, and I wrote a letter to them that was my promise to them that I read on behalf of our family, and I want to begin today by reading that letter to you all. I wrote, "Beloved ancestors, many obstacles have been placed in the way of us returning to the land where you were enslaved, abused, and forced to work to enrich the white Lenoir enslavers. The pandemic, a stroke, a fear of flying, and long COVID delayed our journey here. Before that, the education system withheld any knowledge of where you came from, the cruelty you endured, or the creativity and beautiful resistance you contributed to the world. The system of white supremacy used many tactics to deceive us and prevent our family from making this pilgrimage to where you were held captive and denied manumission. Despite the many obstacles and the plots to hide this place from us and deny us knowledge of this land and your existence here, we have found it. Your family has returned to claim you. We have returned to the forced enslaved labor camp that was politely referred to as the Lenoir Plantation. We have returned to the place where you no doubt spent endless hours picking cotton and tobacco with the promise of the lash if you slowed down or refused. We have returned to the site of unspeakable horrors. But we have also returned to the place where you all dared to live, a place where you all had the incredible courage to love, despite knowing that falling in love could inflict a terrible pain when your beloved was sold away or worked to death. We are here. We are at the very place where you found ways to guard your humanity from those who thought it was possible to steal. We are here where you sang together, granted forgiveness to a friend who hurt your feelings, dressed the wounds of those who were injured, and held those in need of comfort. We are here to experience a truth deeper than any that can be understood intellectually. We are here to make a promise to you and to this land and to each other. You will not be forgotten. It doesn't matter if they pass laws that make it illegal to speak of you or teach about you or learn about you, because those laws don't govern us. Only truth and love govern us. And so we will pass on the knowledge of this land and your existence here to our posterity and to all we encounter. We send to you our deepest gratitude for gifting us the will to survive and the spirit of resistance that you pass to us through your blood and through your stories. With eternal love, Jesse, Jamana, and Gerald. I count those moments among the most precious of my life. And when we got to the end, we knelt down to the ground to be closer to our ancestors and just felt this wave of light and healing wash over us. And this book is really the confirmation of my promise to my ancestors to set their story free and to teach the truth regardless of the consequences. And part one of my book is titled Disremembering, where I discuss the concepts of the violence of organized forgetting, a concept developed by Henry Giroux, and then related concepts by Boaventura de Sousa Santos, epistemicide, which is the annihilation of the ways of knowing, and a related concept I developed in the book called educational arson, where I trace the history of using the actual flame to burn books, burn schools, burn knowledge that has been used to terrorize black communities throughout history. And, you know, Arturo Schomburg, the visionary behind this institution, was once told by a teacher that black people had no histories. They had no heroes. They had no real accomplishments. And he spent his life proving that teacher wrong, right? And rather than accepting those falsehoods, he collected thousands of books and manuscripts and artifacts to document our extraordinary history and the contributions of black people to the world. And his life's work is a testament to the power of truth teaching, right? And today, powerful people are very upset that folks like Arturo Schomburg did his work. Folks like Carter G. Woodson and Septima Clark and Angela Davis and so many others who have continued to tell the stories of the black freedom struggle. And they are trying to impose on children across the country the violence of organized forgetting. And they're doing that with banning honest history and passing what I call in the book truth crime laws that are designed to criminalize teaching the truth about systemic racism and oppression. And I want to take a look, show you all. This is my great-great-grandmother, Laura Lenoir, who I discussed with you all. She was enslaved in Mississippi until she was 13 years old. And I refuse to hide that history from my students, from the educators I work with. They're going to know who she is and what she went through, right? That she and her family built that plantation house and was not compensated for it. Now, the laws trying to hide this history, these truth crime laws, are so over the top, so draconian, that I would submit to you all today that the only news source capable of properly documenting how horrific these laws are is The Onion. Did you all see this headline? Teacher fired for breaking state's critical race theory laws after telling students she's black. Right? My hometown of Seattle has a similar newspaper called The Needling. They ran this headline: Florida bans the letters LGBTQ from the alphabet. Right? As absurd as these headlines are, I want you to compare the absurdity of these headlines to the real, actual truth crime laws that exist. And I write this in the book. We are bearing witness to an era in which teachers who allow students to learn about racial disparities stemming from the legacy of slavery and segregation can be charged with what I call a truth crime. A truth crime is any honest pedagogy in a jurisdiction where truthful teaching has been outlawed. Truth crime is enforced disremembering. A truth crime law, then, is one that makes lying to children obligatory and effectively renders honest educators as truth criminals. The goal for the enforcers of truth crime in the end is to make committing a truth crime literally impossible, because there will be no one left who learned the past, so that there will be no one left to teach it. This requires rewriting the past so that it appears to justify the dramatic inequality that exists today, and so that it imposes the ability of those who have learned the revisionist history, impedes the ability of those who have learned the revisionist history to imagine a future without oppression. And the current truth crime laws are really beyond imagination. In Florida, the official state curriculum states that slavery was of, quote, personal benefit to black people. Okay? This is not in the Ku Klux Klan youth handbook. This is in the official state curriculum mandated by the state of Florida. In Florida, if you get caught with a banned book in your classroom that discusses race, gender, or sexuality, teachers face felony charges of 5 years in jail and a $5,000 fine. There are laws being passed across this country that are imposing these truth crime laws. We think of Florida and we think of Texas, but the reality is, today in the United States, almost half of all children in the public schools go to a school where their teacher is required to lie to them about American history, is required to lie to them about black history, is mandated by laws and policies to lie to them about systemic racism, about homophobia, about transphobia. You might have once thought that a dystopian story you shuddered at was fantastical. Firemen who burn books in Fahrenheit 451, or a state that declares ignorance is strength in 1984, or the sameness social engineering attained in part by only allowing one person to remember the past in the book The Giver. But if you consider those tales along today's post-truth schooling, you will see that we are rapidly descending into that dystopia. And it's not just red states, it's not just the South. In California, where they don't have a statewide ban on CRT and they don't have truth crime laws passed at the state level, nonetheless, at the district level, they have these same kind of policies as Florida, so that 110,000 students in the state of California are not allowed to learn about racism. In my home state of Washington, we have 3 school districts. We know that here in New York State, you had Smithtown Library Board in Long Island voted to remove LGBTQ+ pride displays and related books from children's sections across its 4 branches before protest reversed that decision. And we know Moms for Liberty has been very active here, trying to get books banned and teachers discredited. And who are these people trying to pass truth crime laws? In the book, I call them uncritical race theorists. Yes, the media is filled with discussions about critical race theory, but what I believe is not discussed and what needs to be is uncritical race theory. So I want to just read to you from the book about what I mean by uncritical race theory. Uncritical race theory is the term I'm developing here to define systems of belief that unquestionably subscribe to prevailing views on race that reinforce existing racial power relations. Uncritical race theory denies that racism exists at all, or maintains that racism primarily victimizes white people, or rejects any systemic or institutional analysis in favor of interpersonal explanations that understand racism only as sporadic or merely a product of individual bias, right? And they try to claim that any teacher who wants to teach honestly about Black history or about systemic racism is teaching critical race theory, and it's only a theory, and we're politicizing the classroom with our own personal theory. But that only makes sense if you believe that maintaining the status quo of institutional racism is apolitical, right? It only makes sense if you think that they don't have a theory of race, but in fact they have a very developed theory of race, right? They try to hide that theory behind this wall of this smoke screen of objectivity or neutrality, but we need to name their theory of race. It's uncritical race theory because it uncritically accepts the current racist structures. And I just will wrap up by saying that we have to combat this. We are rapidly descending into a world that is embracing open fascism. When you have a Heil Hitler salute at the presidential inauguration, when you have basic truths of history being banned from classrooms, it's a very dangerous situation we're in, and we know it's going to take educators and students and parents and caregivers and community organizers and activists linking arms and fighting back to defend honest history, but not just to defend teaching and telling the truth, because the truth alone won't set us free. It's really the truth in service of collective action that is going to set us free. And to do that, I suggest that we replace the violence of organized forgetting with what I call the radical healing of organized remembering. And the radical healing of organized remembering is really about organized actions and collective efforts in education, but also in social movements, to uncover the purposefully concealed lessons that are vital for resisting in this era. And I want to just end by suggesting to you all what is required of honest educators in our time to build this resistance. So in the book I write, quote, "Truth teaching isn't only an intellectual endeavor, but it is also an emotional one. Honest educators are guided by love. Commitment to truth-telling lays the groundwork for the openness and honesty that is the heartbeat of love," writes Bell Hooks. Truth teacher Cornel West observed, quote, "Justice is what love looks like in public." And I would add that truth teaching is what love looks like in the public schools. Thank you. As connections in the Teach Truth movement networks grow, and as the movement scores more victories, the potential to build a truly massive rebellion against all manifestations of systemic racism increases. And look out. The movements that finally burst through the McCarthyism era produced one of the largest eras of social protest in U.S. history, including the civil rights movement, Black Power uprisings, anti-war agitation, women's liberation organizing, struggles for LGBTQ plus liberation, anti-colonial insurrections, disability justice activism, ethnic studies insurgencies, labor unrest, and student revolts. As I write, our society is in a liminal space between uncritical race theory and the forming of a great resistance against the very concept of truth crime. When the next round of uprisings break through today's neo-McCarthyist, anti-CRT, and neoliberal policies, we will see what kind of upheaval it produces. I don't know what the rebellion will look like exactly, but I do know that persecution begets defiance, and oppression inevitably courts resistance. Be assured that truth teachers won't just be watching or even just be teaching about this rebellion. They will be in the streets with their students, forming a sea of humanity that will shipwreck all the fear and lies and punishment and demagoguery of uncritical race theorists. And finally, there have been many names given to the destination of those seeking relief from racism and oppression. The poet Phyllis Wheatley, who had been enslaved and kidnapped from West Africa before gaining her freedom and becoming the first African-American author to publish a book of poetry, called the destination deliverance. And the great gospel soul band, the Staples Singers, simply called it a place in their hit single, "I'll Take You There." And they told us that this place would be a safe place where no one would smile at us while they lied to our face. Martin Luther King called our destination the beloved community. The Black Panther Party called our destination socialism. As member Assata Shakur put it, quote, "Capitalism meant that rich businessmen owned the wealth, while socialism meant that the people who made the wealth owned it." Stevie Wonder called our destination higher ground and invited us in his sonically soaring refrain to keep on going until we reach it. The higher ground we seek is not an isthmus with only room for a few. There is room for everyone, and you're all invited to join us there. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Let's sit and have a chat.
All right, let's talk. Thank you, everybody. Yay, good to see you, Ina.
Thank you again, really. And as someone who's actually read the book, you are in for an amazing, fulfilling ride. I wanted to circle back to a bit more about uncritical race theory.
Yeah.
And two things. I think first, where and how it's playing out, but also maybe people don't realize the billions of dollars behind this.
Yes. Yeah, thanks for that question. Because the mainstream media narrative is that this attack on critical race theory, what they call critical race theory, which is just a placeholder for Black history or teaching any honest assessment of the genocide of Native Americans and the enslavement of Black people and oppression in general. And so their mainstream narrative of this attack on CRT is that during the lockdown, during pandemic, families got this window into their children's education by watching their kids on the Zoom screen, and they were horrified by seeing the shaming of white children going on in the classroom. And so a grassroots parents movement rose up to defend their children from these horrific anti-racist teachers who are all about shaming white children, right? And you see that narrative across the spectrum, right? You see it, of course, on Fox News, but it's in liberal media as well. And in fact, nothing could be further from the truth. This isn't a grassroots movement of parent organizers. This is funded by the richest people the world has ever known who were terrified of the 2020 uprising, right? Nothing scared the uncritical race theorists more than seeing tens of millions of people linking arms in solidarity and demanding an end to structural racism, especially young people who took to the streets and weren't just demanding to defund the police, but also demanding to learn the truth about their histories. And were going into schools and demanding their educators teach them the truth about their own culture, right? And so that's where the attack on anti-racist education came from. Billionaires who were worried that solidarity was being forged in the streets by tens of millions of people and needing to find ways to divide and conquer, right? And so they financed Moms for Liberty and all the rest of what I call in the book parent truth crime associations, right? They financed them with untold wealth, and the media gave them a platform. And it's not this grassroots effort, right? They're trying to impose uncritical race theory on all of our classrooms and using this wealth to do it.
Thank you. Building on that, this is happening in less suspected places, like McGraw-Hill textbooks coming out of Texas. Could you say more about that?
Yeah, absolutely, because as vicious as the current attack on anti-racist education is, we know it's been happening from the inception of this country, right? And it's embedded in mainstream textbooks. And we really have to go back to, we could say 1739, the first anti-literacy law was passed in South Carolina. And it was a direct result of the Stono Rebellion. So a man named Jemmy helped to organize the largest rebellion of enslaved people in South Carolina history. And he and his comrades marched with a banner that said liberty across it. And they went plantation to plantation, getting more and more enslaved people to join them. And so when the South Carolina militia put down this rebellion and killed all the rebels, they didn't just want to murder those who were fighting against slavery. They wanted to murder the ability of people to ever write the word liberty again. And so the very next year, they passed the first anti-literacy law, and those spread throughout the South, right? And that was a beginning of the attack on black education. You know, during Reconstruction, white supremacists burned down 600 schools across the South, 600 black schools, in acts of educational arson. And they've always feared black education. And as you pointed out, the McGraw-Hill textbook, first noticed by a student in Texas, perpetuated one of the worst myths and erasures of slavery, right? People, did you all see that textbook? It looks like a few of you have. It's amazing that this kid, Kobe, was in class, and he opens up his textbook to the page the teacher assigns, and the caption on the textbook, the title of the section was Patterns of Immigration, and then it talks about how workers were brought from Africa to America, right? Insinuating that they were paid. Nowhere did it say it was unpaid forced labor, right? And this is the hidden curriculum that we've had to deal with from the very beginning. And you know what? The uncritical race theorists prefer to just use the hidden curriculum to omit black history and lie about black history. They would prefer that method rather than having to pass laws to ban you from learning, because that's much more obvious, right? The reason why they're passing laws now to ban us from learning instead of just using textbooks to lie to us is because people saw through the lies, because millions and millions of students began questioning the textbooks. Educators began setting the textbooks aside, right? And picking up books like A People's History of the United States, right? Picking up books from Lerone Bennett or so many other incredible scholars who have told the truth. And so that's why they're now passing laws to make it illegal to read those books.
Thank you for that. I wanted to turn to a bit more about you. You know, you bring so much knowledge and in-depth research to the book, but there's also the personal. You are a student of public schools. You're a teacher in public schools. You're a parent of children in public schools. Can you talk a little bit about those experiences?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I began teaching in Washington, D.C., and I really think that it was my fifth graders there in Southeast D.C. that taught me the most. That was like my graduate degree from those fifth graders who, they kicked my butt my first year teaching, no doubt. I learned a lot from them about how to build a safe space in the classroom. But wow, what an education I received when I started teaching in 2001. And the classroom that I was in, it was a completely segregated school, 100% African American students. And I had a hole in the ceiling of my classroom that I didn't know I had until I came in on Monday, and there was a half-inch of standing water on the ground. And the first research project I'd ever assigned the students was destroyed before they could present it because they were just waterlogged. And it was right around that time that I saw the smoke rising from the Pentagon, and the 9/11 attacks occurred, and that was scary. But what was far more terrifying was the way that our government was able to mobilize untold billions of dollars to go bomb children halfway around the world and couldn't fix the hole in the ceiling of my classroom just down the street from the White House. And that was the education that I got. I came to understand how this country functions. There's always enough money to enrich a few, to wage war and destroy, but not to build and support and nurture our youth. And that's why I've dedicated my life to fighting back. So, I've been involved in the struggle ever since that experience, teaching, coming back to my hometown of Seattle and teaching middle school, and then ending back up at my alma mater, Garfield High School. And that was, yeah, Bulldogs. We have some Bulldogs in the house? Right on. All right. So, yeah, and learned an incredible amount from the courageous faculty and educators at Garfield and in Seattle who taken a lot of stands around issues for social justice. And I've just learned over and over again that when educators and students and parents and caregivers unite, it's an incredible force. And I wish all of our social movements and the left in this country understood the necessity to focus on education the way the right wing is, right? They know that education is a crucial site of struggle, and that if they can control the schools, they can control so much of our society. And it's time that all of our social movements learn that lesson and see the power of bringing together the hundreds of millions of people that are students, educators, and parents, right? And so I hope that we begin it's crucial that we begin organizing them together right now, because with ICE agents menacing schools, we need to link arms, surround our schools, and refuse to let those ICE agents in. We need to then teach the truth that the border crossed Latinx people, right? Not the other way around. The United States illegally seized so much land from Mexico and then calls those people illegal after stealing land from indigenous people, right? These are crimes, and we have to organize and teach the truth. And then when we understand that this is indigenous land that we're on, then we understand the current need to demand land back, right?
Thank you for that. Maybe as we close, you could talk a bit about the collective movement that you've been part of, the Teach Truth movement, work with Howard Zinn, and so on.
Yeah, thank you. The Teach Truth movement is incredible, and I invite everybody to participate in it. We need you all in order to build it big enough to fight back, because their advantage that the uncritical race theorists have is their bank accounts, right? They have endless amounts of money that they can use to lie and spread lies and pass laws against us. And our advantage is our numbers, right? We saw the 3 richest people in the world sitting behind Donald Trump at the inauguration, and they're using their wealth to divide and conquer. But here's the thing. There's only 3 of them. Let's go get them, y'all. They wouldn't stand a chance, right? We outnumber them, but we only outnumber them if we overcome the divisions of racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, right? If we can't overcome those divisions, then they win, because we're all fighting each other. We're pointing our finger at an immigrant, a black person, a Haitian, a trans youth who just wants to play sports and be themselves, right? As long as they have us living in fear of each other, they laugh all the way to the bank. And as soon as we learn the history of the power of solidarity, then we stand a chance. And I've seen that power in my own organizing, in my own life. And maybe I'll just end with a story of organizing that gives me hope. When the first year I got back to Garfield High School to teach at my alma mater, started teaching AP US history. And of course, they wanted me to teach to the test and get those students to all pass the AP exam. But that just wasn't who I was, right? That's not who I am. I don't care what some corporate board somewhere thinks is important for my students to know. And so I started using the Zen Education Project website, downloading the free downloadable lessons that aren't just like talking points for a lecture, but are, interactive pedagogy that engages students in the most crucial debates. So we did like reenactments of the Seneca Falls Convention, where they organized a fight for women's rights and women's suffrage, right? Or the students do a lesson where they all join a different abolitionist organization. And so all the abolitionist organizations come to one meeting and they're debating through, how are we going to end slavery, right? And there's a lot of different strategies that the actual organizations had and debates. And so they're having these live debates in class and then comparing what they ended up deciding with what the actual organizations did, right? Or like the lesson on the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and the Civil Rights Movement, where they all come together and they have to debate the strategy for how they're going to win, how they're going to overturn Jim Crow segregation, right? Or the struggles of the anti-Vietnam War movement, right? And after a year of teaching them all these lessons from social movements throughout U.S. history, many of them actually did really well on the AP exam as a byproduct because they actually loved history and wanted to study more and more. But that's not when they passed my test. It was the following year when the state legislature voted to cut billions of dollars from the education budget. And a group of us in the Social Equity Educators Union Caucus were outraged, and we knew that the state constitution said that funding education was the state's paramount duty, right? It said, quote, paramount duty to fund education. So we went down along with thousands of Occupy activists to the state capitol, and the group of us educators actually got into the House Ways and Means Committee meeting where they were gaveling in the session to cut the budget. And we mic checked the room and we read out the state constitution. And we declared that it was their paramount duty to fund education. And then we said that actually we were at the scene of a crime because they weren't just breaking any law, they were breaking the highest law of our state. And so at that point, I can't believe I did this. I even lifted up a pair of plastic handcuffs and invited them to come into my custody for a citizen's arrest. And if you can believe it, the police officer in the room didn't have my same interpretation of the law, and he arrested me instead of the legislature. I don't know how that happened. So I spent the evening in jail, and the next day I get to school, and one of my students comes running up to me, a student I had the previous year and taught all these social movements. He came running up to me, said, "Mr. Hagopian, it worked." I said, "What?" He said, "I started a Facebook page called Free Mr. Hagopian, and here you are." I was like, right on, man. Thanks for getting me out. But you know what he did? In 24 hours, he changed the title of the Facebook page from Free Mr. Hagopian to Walk Out Against the Budget Cuts. And the next day, they had over 500 students with signs. They made a pamphlet that described what the budget cuts were going to do to the school. And they marched from Garfield High School to City Hall, demanded an audience with the mayor. He came out and addressed them. And they sparked a citywide movement, started a citywide youth organization to demand full funding for the schools. And just a few weeks later, the state legislature voted in support of this movement and made the state legislature pay billions of dollars back to education. And I'll just end by saying that's what they really fear. They know we're not shaming white children. That's the lie they use to whip up votes. What they really fear is that we're teaching white children about the history of multiracial solidarity and mass social movements, and that they will learn the lessons from history and apply them today, just like my students have done. That's what they fear. That's why they're passing these laws, and we can stand up and fight back.
Jesse, thank you so much for your time. Thank you also for the book and
Thank you.
for our next adventure.
All right, let's do it. I'll see you in the struggle.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. I hope you enjoy the book.
Thank you also to everyone for how invested you are. And we're now going to pivot and offer you a bit of some of the tools we here at the Schomburg are offering in the struggle. So Brian Jones is going to come back out and share a bit about the Schomburg curriculum. And for those of you here in person, we'll have a break, and then we'll go into some workshops. Thank you again, Jesse Hagopian.
All right, thanks.
Oh my goodness. Wow. How about that Jesse Hagopian? Man, this book is so inspiring. The first, as Jesse described, the first half of it is about what we're facing, the attacks, but the second half, similar to the story he just told, are stories of the ways that teachers, parents, and students are fighting back. So you all get a freebie, but please spread the word and let other people know about this book. So now I have the pleasure of talking about the Schomburg curriculum or I have to get used to calling it its new proper name, Teaching with the Schomburg Center's Archives. So I'm going to give an overview of it. And as Joy mentioned, this goes all the way back to a proposal we made to the Institute of Museum and Library Services in 2018. But it really goes further back because it goes to the legacy of Arturo Schomburg. As Joy and Jesse mentioned, Arturo Schomburg was somebody who, Afro-Puerto Rican, bibliophile, historian, activist, collecting books and artifacts in his own personal collection, in his small apartment. People would come from all over to use his collection until it was purchased by the New York Public Library 100 years ago. And that's why we are getting ready to celebrate the centennial of the Schomburg Center, this incredible collection that started with about 10,000 items, and today, in this building where we're sitting, has more than 11 million items related to the global African diaspora. We understand that you literally do not have time to look through these items. It is so hard to do archival research, to go through the dusty boxes. If you do have time, bless you. But we understand that most of you don't. And that's why we were so lucky that IMLS said yes. And I'm glad Joy was on that panel reviewing the proposal, said yes to this project because that grant enabled the Schomburg Center to hire two amazing people, Nicole Daniels and Dr. Lauren O'Brien, who they did have time to, thanks to that grant, to look through the collections and look for items that they thought would be relevant, legible in all senses of the word, and potentially impactful in your classrooms and in your teaching. They consulted with scholars. They tested draft lessons in workshops with teachers. Some of you in this room may have been in some of those workshops where we were trying out some of those lessons. And unfortunately, so much time has passed that neither of them could be here today. I'm so sad about that. But I just want to make sure we acknowledge them, because this project would not exist without the work that they did. And I was the project director, and together, the three of us were guided by an amazing advisory board, Doctors Yolanda Seeley-Ruiz and Ansley Erickson, along with Adam Sanchez and, yes, Jesse Hagopian. So thanks to their efforts, we now have, oh, here we go. We now have this. And ultimately, it will be 15 lessons, but for now, we have 6. Black women writers, Black women in self-representation, and you can see in small type at the top the theme, Black women's stories. Aesthetics of Black power, the Black Panther Party in Harlem, and you see second theme, Black power. Abolition as a Black-led movement, race, racism, and white supremacy, and you see the theme, slavery and abolition. So 3 themes. Within each theme, ultimately there will be 5 lessons, but for now there are 2. And these themes were chosen based on strengths of the Schomburg Center's collections. So this is an attempt to highlight strengths that are of the resources that are in this building and let you and your students have access to them. That is what we're after here. And there's more to come. And I just want to say that in the home stretch to make these available with today as a deadline, knowing that we were all going to be here, so many people really worked hard, and I'm just kind of trying to sprinkle my thanks throughout, but Joy Bivens, Kevin Matthews, Kara Hill really dug in and helped make this possible, and all the curators here at the Schomburg Center, we were constantly sending them drafts and having them review and look at things. Barry Brown, Myra Liriano, Tammy Lawson, Delilah Scruggs, Latanya Autry, and Cassidy Jones all helped us tremendously. So let me talk about the scope of this curriculum series, kind of what it is and what it is not, just so that you're clear. What it is unique primary sources from the Schomburg Center's collection, and each lesson has about 3 to 4. It is designed for middle and high school students. And we know if you teach otherwise, some of you teaching post-secondary or teaching elementary or upper elementary may, use your craft to adapt them as you see fit, but they were aimed for middle and high school audiences. And of course, because we're the library, there is always in every lesson an invitation to look further. We're showing you, if you wanted to come back and look in the boxes, we're showing you which boxes to come back and look in. If you want to come check out the book, we're giving you the bibliographies. We're giving you the citations that you can use to come back with or without your students and read more. And crucially, these are designed to supplement, not replace any curriculum. These are not like, here's a unit to teach from September through December. These are unique items, just a few of them, that you can fly into what we assume something you are already teaching. So this actually may not work for many people as a kind of 101 or a place to begin or get started. This is truly designed for people who are already teaching themes in Black history, but want to access something that their students might not have ever seen before because it's in the Schomburg Center's archives, and how would you ever have time to get access to it? Well, we're helping you and your students use it, see it, access it in your classrooms. That's the intention here. There are actually other great curriculums out there that help people get started or that are more comprehensive. You may be aware that Teachers College, the Black Education Research Collective, just helped the New York City Department rebranded as New York City Public Schools, publish a new Black Studies K-12 curriculum that is very comprehensive. And a former Schomburg Center colleague, Deirdre Holman, was instrumental in that. So, that's, yes, kudos. It's an amazing effort and a resource. And we said, bravo, amazing. This product does not compete with that or with any curriculum. This is something to augment, to supplement, to deepen conversations that you're already having in your curriculum, in your classrooms. Okay, Some key features. I want to talk about what you'll see on the page when you, and this is all online for now. What you'll see on the page. You have historical context essays, very short essays that kind of give you the history that you need. You use this for your own, just kind of boning up and rehearsing something for yourself. If appropriate, you can show it to your students. We have ready-to-use activities and discussion questions, the usual things that you would expect in something like this. Like, here's a line of questioning that we think goes with this set of items. We have transcripts, because in some cases, plain text transcripts, things are in cursive. You know, they're old-timey documents. They're hard to read. I think it's sometimes fun with students to do the work of trying to read something. But just so that you have it in your toolkit, if you want to deploy a plain text transcript, it's there for you. And we also were able to translate the primary sources into Spanish. That's available online. And of course, as I mentioned before, scholarly citations. Now, I just want to say, let me sprinkle in a few more thank yous, because a lot of people worked to make this suite of things available for each of these lessons. Just imagine multiplying by all the primary sources and all the lessons and all of the themes. So let me just mention, especially the Center for Educators in Schools curriculum development team played an essential role in making all these pieces finally come together, starting with Alex Tronalone, who generously stepped in to manage the overall project, as well as Dr. Emily Brooks, Lisa Gomez, Katie Uva, and Emily Urachima, who provided additional research and writing. And then lastly, the design and editing work of our colleagues in the communications department just made everything so crisp and beautiful. Barbara Gagan and Kanako Shimizu especially really elevated this work and gave it the polish that it deserves. And here's where you find it. So, yeah, you know what to do. This is a QR code, and you use that with your, NSA tracking device to access it. But if you forget how to if you lose track of this QR code, you can just remember the Schomburg curriculum, nypl.org/Schomburg curriculum, and that will take you there. So in a moment, we're going to have some workshops. We're going to dig into just 2 lessons from the Black Power series. But before I do, I just want to give you one more commercial, which is to tell you a little bit more about the work I'm doing over at the Center for Educators in Schools and let you understand what that is. It's intended to be your one-stop shop as teachers for everything you need at the library. And so you can bookmark us at nypl.org/CES. Some things to note: we are co-sponsoring, we'll be back here at the Schomburg Center February 19th, co-sponsoring a program about the revolutionary friendship of Yuri Kochiyama and Malcolm X. It's going to be exciting. We're going to be back here also on April 3rd, co-sponsoring a special event in the Conversations in Black Freedom Studies series. There'll be a special program that we will co-sponsor on rethinking Martin and Coretta Scott King. And we also look out for opportunities around the library for your students, like the newly announced James Baldwin Teen Writing Contest that's organized by our colleagues in Teen Services. So you don't have to write any of this down, because if you just go to nypl.org/CES and sign up for our monthly newsletter, you will be in the know, and you will know immediately when all of these things are happening. I want to thank everybody who signed in on our live stream, which I think are now going to bring to a close, and move on to the rest of our program. Thank you, live stream audience. That does it for the beginning part, and now back to Kara Hill. Thank you. Yeah, maybe just once each way. Yeah.
Thank you again, everybody. We're going to take a break, but we're adjusting the schedule a little bit, if it's all right. So we'll have some folks, Brittany's in the back, if you can put your hand up. We're going to divide up and go into 2 different rooms. Okay, so you heard that. So our guests over here and in the back, if you can go at 10:30 into the American Negro Theater, and then everyone else be back here, please. and you'll get a chance to talk, explore, learn about 2 of our modules. Thank you again. We'll see you in 10.